Hello, and welcome to Regrets I've Had a Few. I'm Paul Hunter, Artistic Director of Told by an Idiot, and this is a podcast where I talk to friends and colleagues delving into what made them the person they are today.
Hello, and welcome. My guest this month is a theatre company who are certainly making a splash. Formed by a group of students who met at the Lecoq School in Paris, this collective have created some unique feminist theatrical experiences, and their work has been described as a brilliant mix of visual humour and subtle satire. Welcome, Bric.
Thank you so
Hi,
much.
thank you.
Hello. Well, I say Bric. It's not all of Bric. I have Alex and Kitty and Anna with me. Could you kind of fill listeners in on who the rest of the collective is?
Yeah, of course. So, hi. So myself, Kitty, Anna, Alex, Christina, and Roxanne all met at Lecoq back in 2013, and Bric-a-Brac kind of began forming at the end of 2014. But there were kind of a lot of us at the beginning. I think there were in our first show 9 of us.
For 8 or 9.
Yeah, there were a lot of us, and then over the years, people have kind of been in and out. But it's the 5 of us now who company.
So you at some point fairly quickly you realised the lunacy of trying to have a theatre group with 9 people.
Yeah,
in it.
tricky.
I think, yeah, a few people didn't love the admin that came with running a theatre company.
Yes, that's also, I see where you're headed there, Alex. Well, speaking of someone who almost absolutely adores admin, that's, I've managed to work through that. Anyway, we will, of course, talk much about Lecoq or touch on that because it's where you met. And also in the podcast, we've had various guests who are either alumni or indeed still connected there. The wonderful Josh Human has been on the podcast and works with us. So I will grill you about that later. But we will start how I usually start, which is I'm going to invite you to try to remember or return to your earliest theatrical experience, what you remember seeing, and whether that was with family or school or friends. But if anyone has an early memory of watching live performance and what effect it had on you.
I have a really strong memory. So I grew up in Doncaster, and my family are not a theatrical family, but every year we would go and see Blood Brothers. I still think it's the one where if I got on that as sort of a resident or an assistant, my mum would be very proud of me. Everything else she doesn't understand, but Blood Brothers is the one. And I think just like the epicness of the music and all the superstitions in it, I just remember thinking theatre's really cool.
Well, I have to say I'm very intrigued, Anna, by the fact that you went to see the same production.
They still do.
How many times have they seen it?
I think my mum has definitely seen it over 20 times.
Extraordinary. Like super fan.
I hope it's the same actors in it for the last 20 years.
That would be wonderful, wouldn't it? Playing the 2 boys. That'd be fantastic. Well, that's quite a unique thing. Yes, of course. I can see why that would have an impact. Kitty, what about you?
I think I was about 8 or 9, and my mum took me to the Little Angel Puppet Theatre because I grew up in North London, Manor House. And I remember she took me there, and it was the Secret Garden with shadow puppetry. And I remember going in and being quite scared because it was very dark. And she was like, has to be dark because it's shadow puppetry. And being like not kind of aware of what was going to happen. But yeah, I remember it being really visually like arresting and being very interested in that and being like, how does it work? I remember talking a lot afterwards about like, but I don't understand. How does it work? So I think that kind of sparked a bit of inspiration in me for sure.
Also, that feels a very sort of creative first experience of live performance.
Yeah, definitely. I think because I don't think there was a lot of speaking in it from what I remember as well. And that then years later, training at Lecoq and doing the kind of training we did, I think, I don't know, maybe at 8, I was like, yes, I need to speak less, move more, and be a shadow.
Speak less, move more. That's not so bad. I should jot that in my notebook. Alex, what about you?
It's a good question. I think the first memory I have of seeing theater, maybe I was 7 or 8, and I was staying with a really good friend of mine and her family in Myrtle Beach. And her mom took us to go see, it was called The Lullabies of Broadway. So it was a medley of all sorts of different musical numbers. And I remember sitting there and watching it and just being like, I want to be there. I want to be where they are on stage. And then afterwards, my friend Elizabeth and I just made up songs for the rest of the trip. And we ended up creating a song called Showbiz Broadway, which we performed to the whole third grade class when we got back to school.
I have to say, Alex, that no disrespect to Blood Brothers or the Little Angel Theatre, but that stands proper showbiz. American
It was very showbiz.
American showbiz. That sounds really lullabies, but how fantastic. And what are you still in touch with your friend that you created that with, or is that relationship?
Yeah.
Oh, what?
Yeah, she was at our wedding.
Oh, how cool! Did she go down the showbiz path like you, or
No, she's a nurse.
Ah. Well, I feel I'm sidetracking here slightly about your friend there. So I'll bring this back. So obviously you're growing up in different places. Doncaster, where we in North London, and whereabouts in Canada or America?
Well, America. I kind of moved all over.
Okay. So, but I suppose my next question really, or thought was, you've had your first theatrical experience. You've seen that. At what point did the notion of performing yourself become a thing? Was that at school or a youth theatre, or how did that all start?
I remember, I think it was actually before I saw that show, because we were living in LA at the time, and that was earlier in my life. And it was Thanksgiving, and I remember I have a very strong memory of sitting on the swings with my aunt, and she said something about, why don't you write a show? And I didn't know how to write at that point. So she was like, well, you tell me what you want everyone to say, talking about me and my cousins and my brother, and I'll write it down for you and you can follow it. This is a script. And so we wrote this show about a turkey getting captured and eaten at Thanksgiving. And and I don't remember what happened in this show, but I remember at the end, there was somebody who was a turkey, and at the end we came on with a piece of paper that had a turkey on it. And this, from then on, it was all family get-togethers, cousins. We would always make little shows together to perform for the family.
How wonderful. And the fact that you had a dramaturg who was writing it down for you, and then what sounds like a fairly Brechtian influence with the drawing of the turkey on the paper. It's sort of an eclectic mix there. Kitty, what about you? How did you end up?
I think similar to Alex, I was a child who made like my parents and carers and family friends watch me like dance or like tell jokes.
Tell jokes, excellent.
Yeah, used to love doing that. Like reading joke books and then being like, look at this joke I made up, and everyone's like, did you? I think that was a signature move. But then when I was about 9, I joined a youth theatre in Tottenham, and that was in like a little community hall, and there were kind of a group of us from my primary school who went, and I remember being so excited because we made a show, so it was like a devised show about a tour group of really grumpy people on a tour with these like wacky tour guides, and I got cast as one of the tour guides, and I was like, I love this. And it was really fun. And my friend, my like best friend who I've known since I was 4, got cast as one of the grumpy kind of adults on the tour, and she was really, really angry. But I was the tour guide.
Welcome to showbiz.
Yeah.
I have to ask, as someone who lived very happily in Tottenham for 10 years, and my kids were born there, we had a lovely time there. Whereabouts was your youth theatre?
It was in Chestnuts Park,
yes.
in the community centre. I don't know if they do drama there still. It doesn't seem as used, but sometimes people are outside it because I live quite near there still.
I know exactly where.
But in that community set, because I went to, well, it's Chestnut, but Woodlands Park Primary School, so the primary school right next to it. Yeah. So yeah, a short walk from school, but I loved it there.
Very good. From Tottenham to Lecoq. It's an journey. Anna, I might slightly change my question because I'd like you to talk about performing, but obviously I'm intrigued because I know one of your key roles in obviously directing the repertoire and the work that you do in Bric-a-Brac. So a little bit about the performing, but when was this idea that actually there's this figure called a director? When did you learn about what a director did?
Really late. I thought I really, really late. I grew up in a slightly weird way where my mum sort of started a school with 5 of her mates, and so there were only 6 of us in the school in Leeds, and we would they'd make us do sort of unabridged versions of Shakespeare from age 5. So A Midsummer Night's Dream and Merchant of Venice, which is really odd. But I used to know everybody's lines. I was terrible on stage, but I would know all the lines. And I think looking back, that's sort of an indicator of where I've ended up, which is I'm really want to know everything about everything and go behind the scenes of everything. And then in school we'd do plays, and they'd always cast me as sort of the larger man and pad me up in pillows, and it used to make me cringe inside. But I loved theatre, but I knew I couldn't be on stage. So then ended up doing puppetry because I thought, well, you're on stage, but no one looks at you. And enjoyed that for a while, but then started making my own shows with people around me. And I've got an idea. Let's do this. Let's try this. And then I went with an ex to see a Complicité show. And I thought, how are they doing this? I've never seen anything like this.
And which show was it?
I think it was Street of Crocodiles. It was when I was in high school, just at the end. And I did not understand how you could make something like that. And then started looking a little bit into Lecoq, and then saw work by Told by an Idiot and Rum and Clay. And I sort of wanted a gang. So I looked up Lecoq and I saw you had to act. And I thought, oh gosh, this is not going to be fun, but let's have a crack. And then spent 2 years trying to avoid performance in a performance school.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, you've kind of led us, I suppose, to that point in the journey. So you, by the sound of it, that discovered Lecoq vicariously, maybe through seeing the Complicité show and finding out about that. How, Alex and Kitty, how did you discover Lecoq and what it was?
I did my undergrad at Sarah Lawrence College in New York. And I knew that I wanted to study abroad in Paris. And we had a connection somehow to Lecoq. One of the professors at Sarah Lawrence knew Pascal at Lecoq very well. And so I talked to her about it. The program sounded amazing. I had been doing a bit of movement work at Sarah Lawrence as well. So it felt like it was just kind of meant to be. And then, yeah, I had to do, I don't know if you guys I had to do an audition for the professor at Sarah Lawrence in order for her to recommend me to go to Lecoq. But yeah, fell in love with it once I got there.
Excellent. An American in Paris, of course. Yes, takes us back to the golden age of Hollywood once more. Kitty, how did you hear about Lecoq?
I was in my second year at uni. I went to University of Sussex and I was doing English Lit. But I quickly, from the first year of uni, was in the drama society, and all my tutors were like, you're never going to do that well in your degree if you keep doing play. And it actually took me a whole first year. I didn't get into anything in the drama society till the final term, the struggle. That was really fun. And we did, I worked with a director. We did 448 Psychosis.
Oh my word.
And it was, I love that play because of the experience I had with it. And we used Complicité's rehearsal book. And I remember being like, oh, I'm really interested in this process. But in my second year at uni, we went to Edinburgh with a show with the Drama Society. And I went to see a student who'd been at Sussex with the person who directed the show. And he had made the show, and his company were called Rum and Clay, Anna's already mentioned. And it was called Shutterland. It was 2011. And I saw the show and I came out and I said to my friend, where did they go to school? And she said, Lecoq. I'd never heard of it. I went back to my little Edinburgh Fringe flat, looked it up, and I was like, I want to go there. And then I just waited until I was old enough and had enough money to go.
How interesting. The 3 different roads to Paris that the 3 of you went on. And I sometimes think about this, or sometimes people have asked about this, about when I first met Hayley and John. oh God, 35 odd years ago, at what was then Middlesex Polytechnic. And obviously for a younger generation, I sometimes have to explain what a polytechnic is, but I won't go into that. But I do vividly remember the first occasion of meeting Hayley in the little canteen at the school, and thinking she seemed terribly exotic. I was like 17 from Birmingham and hadn't been further than Belgium by this point, whereas she'd been working in Italy as a chambermaid and all these kind of things. And I was like, wow. So on that note of first meetings, do you each remember the first time you all met at the school?
Yes.
Anna, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you?
Well, I do. I remember because Alex had a party and I thought I wasn't invited.
Which is ridiculous.
So you went anyway.
I just thought, look at this cool American who I thought was a twin with another person who was at the school, which she wasn't. I thought, look at that cool American. I really want to go to her party, and then sort of crashed it, I think, very awkwardly. And then Alice, I think we'd spoken beforehand. I had a party in my flat a couple of nights before Lecoq started, and we'd found some people on Facebook that might be going. And I was so nervous. I remember Alice just being very, very cool as well.
The Facebook group was good. I wonder if they still do that, but we had a Facebook group. So we met with a few people and we were like looking at flats together and going for dinners and stuff and being like, we live in Paris now. And I didn't speak any French. So that was like trying to find nice French people.
Yeah,
challenge.
I similarly to Anna, I remember you being very cool, Kitty, being like slightly like, "Oh, who's this cool British person?"
That's so funny because to me, I was like, I have nowhere to live. I don't understand what people are saying, but the bed is so nice.
And then with Anna, we did one of the first autocours together. It was the one where it was we set it on the canal, and it was with Tantian. Do you looking at me like no? Anyway, I remember it really well because it was the first one that we shared back with the professors, and they actually gave us okay feedback. And I was like, oh wow, Anna knows what she's doing, because she really directed that. Like she really took control of that, the assignment that we had that week.
It's interesting, I visited the school and I come and watch autocours and stuff, and I remember, because of our teaching via John Wright, who had been with Lecoq and Philippe Gollier and whatever, as we were leaving, and John was saying to me and Hayley, you should make something together, which of course we were completely in awe of, that this teacher had said you should do something. And then we met in a cafe in Camden and proceeded to have no ideas whatsoever. One thought I remember at the time was saying to John, should I go to Lecoq? Do you think I should go? And he said, you could, but I don't think you should. I think you should go and make work now. You'll encounter lots of other things. And also, I didn't have the money or any way of going there, but it was some pie in the sky idea. I'm a bit like you, having seen early Compositor shows. I mean, they were only 10 years older than us, so we saw a lot of their very early work, which is a big influence. However, in a roundabout way, I suppose my question is more about the sense that you arrive at this school, which has such a particular philosophy, and the idea of the creativity of the performer. What did it feel like when you were suddenly thrown into that world where you're having to make it up, you're having to come up with stuff on a regular basis? Kitty, what did that feel like?
Yeah, I read the book before I went, which was great because lots of the improvs that he talks about in the book, you do in that kind of first term. It really talks you through the first year. But I remember kind of going and thinking, I'd made a theatre company at university. We had read the Complicité rehearsal book. We were like, I kind of went thinking, oh, I can make devised theatre. Like, I know how to do that. And then I went, and it was actually really humbling for me because the teachers with me were quite tough. I felt like I got a lot of tough love. And I think for me that worked. But a lot of the time they basically were telling me, you don't know what you're doing. And that actually helped me in a big way. But at first, I think I really had to get over the fact that I kind of thought I knew what I wanted to make and what it would look like. And it really changed what I thought like a movement sequence was, because I was obsessed with movement sequences at uni. I'd be like, I put a movement sequence in a play. And then I got to Lecoq and they were like, what is that? And I was like, okay, I need to rethink everything. So for me, I think I found it quite overwhelming, but it then put me in such an empowering position to be like, okay, I know nothing. as myself as a performer. Like, I have an idea of what I like, but I'm just going to be open to the people I'm in the room with and see what comes out. And actually, that's what I think they're really good at Lecoq as well, because we're in two groups. So me, Alex, and Anna weren't actually in the same group. Alex and Anna were in group B. I was in group A with Christina and Roxanne. And you work with so many different people, and it's great because working with all those different people from all around the world, you get different things from everyone. So yeah, for me, I think it was quite humbling, but then it was a really good experience to be like, oh, let's just throw myself into this and see what happens.
It's interesting. You said earlier when you arrived, you had nowhere to live, no money, and they were telling you didn't know what you're doing as well. So you had a triple whammy of things to be coping with.
Yeah, on our first day, at the end of the day, they said, does anyone still not have anywhere to live? And I put my hand up and they said, does anyone have somewhere to put them up? And actually a fellow member of, like, a girl in my class was like, I'll put you up for 2 weeks. So they were all about the community, which was nice.
Very good. Alex, how was it throwing yourself into that world?
Yeah, I came in not knowing much because I had what my professor had told me, but she made it sound like this mystical place where you learned how to be the color blue and might cry at some point. So I really didn't know. I hadn't learned the word. I didn't know what the word devised meant at this point. I didn't know what devised theater was. So once we got started, when I was told every week you get to make something with your classmates, that idea really excited me. I thought that was an incredibly exciting and creative way to work. But then when you actually start to do it, you realize, oh, this is challenging. Our group, especially, I think we were a little bit trying to please too much. And so we were so concerned with trying to get it right. And I think, well, I don't know if we ever really broke out of that, but still, I found it pretty fun, even when it was challenging. And the movement stuff I found really interesting, and it just clicked. Like, I felt like I just sort of got it. So yeah, my experience was positive. Ahead, Anna.
Anna?
I really struggled. I can't lie. I didn't know it was a boxing hall. I didn't know it was all going to be in French. I had not really read up on it. I just had this idea of, I'm going to go learn how to be a clown in Paris. That sounds cool. And when I got there, it was a shock to the system. And then suddenly you're having to improvise, which is terrifying still to this day. Where, they say 3 people get up and people are sort of pushing each other out of the way to get up there to do it. And I would avoid it every single day until the teachers sort of would go, Anna, you need to get up, and stumble through that. And I actually tried to leave at the end of first year. So normally you put your name down to get into the second year and they say yes or no. And I, 2 weeks before the end, or 3 weeks, just didn't turn up. I said, I can't do this anymore. This is horrible. But I love all the people. And then Paula, who was sort of head of the school at the time, called me in, and she'd never spoken English to me. I never had a clue what they were saying. We would be, improvising, and I'd have to go up to someone next to me going, what are we doing? They're like, you're a polar bear carrying an iceberg. And she called me in and she spoke English to me for the first time, and she's like, you need to come back because you've got a good eye. And they sort of, with what's coming up, because you do this performance at the end of first year, your group needs you. So you need to go be with them. Give it 2 more weeks. And I was like, okay. And then did that, and then stayed for the second year, which was traumatic as well, but enjoyably traumatic.
Okay, that's very interesting. The 3 different experiences and responses to the experience. So at what point did you, as a group, including all the others, decide to go, we're going to try and give this a shot post school and try and make something? How did that happen?
In second term of the second year, I think we had a meeting at Alex's flat with, I think, 12 people at that point, who were all
even more. There were loads of people from our year who came to that meeting.
And we said we want to make a show. Does anyone have any ideas? And I said, yeah, I have an idea. I want to make a show about smoking and class and the story of my dad. And everyone said, okay, let's try it. But we have to meet up every Saturday at this big hall in the middle of Paris where people rehearse. And then, that ended up being 9 people that would turn up every week. And then we got a slot at Southwark Playhouse during the 3rd term to do 3 performances, I think, in the studio. So we all went on the train from Paris to London to do these 3 performances, which the school wasn't very happy about, but I'm really glad we did it in hindsight. And performed it. It went really well, and we sort of knew from then that we wanted to continue. So after the 3rd term, we did that show again and took it to Edinburgh. Yeah, and stuck together, and then we continued after that.
It's interesting, given the kind of international mix of the school and where you were, was it always going to be a sense of basing yourself back in the UK, or was Europe an option or elsewhere, or was it always going to be the UK that was going to bring you back?
I think a lot of us were going back to London, or a lot of people were moving to London who weren't from the UK, but they were moving to London after school because they were like, well, I'll go Paris to London and then see what happens. So I think it worked out that a lot of us were in London, but then like Alex was back in the States to finish school, so we didn't have her for a little bit, but then we knew when she came back, like if she came to London, that would happen. So, and that's been the way, a bit like Roxanne now's in Canada, so she's not as involved now, but then if she comes back to the UK. So I think we always thought that that was a benefit as well, that we had people all over, so we could potentially like go and we've always said we would love to take a show to Norway, because we've had a lot of Norwegian players in Bric-a-Brac. Still not happened, maybe one day. But so that's something we've always kind of thought about. But I think with Ash, our first show, that was always kind of going to be in London. So it was just who was going to be in London.
Yeah. It's interesting, I suppose, then, you make something, and we had a similar journey. We went to Edinburgh with our first show. At that point, we weren't in any way thinking about making a company. We just wanted to make a show and get it on in Edinburgh. And I vividly remember standing outside Pleasance 2 or whatever the venue was, and I had to make my entrance because I had to enter through the audience. And I remember looking around at the rest of the presence thinking, whatever happens, however bad this goes, or whatever the reviews are like, at least we can say we did it. At least we can say we made it. We didn't take a play off the shelf. We didn't do a version of Hamlet. We did this. And then luckily, it took off from there. It sort of spiraled. But I suppose my next question is, obviously I encountered your work for the first time in 2019 with Mustard Doesn't Go With Girls, and which I thoroughly enjoyed, as you know, and I spoke to you after. But I suppose I was interested then, and I kind of, when people become something more coherent and they move on, is what do you think defines your work, and how do the shows differ? So what are the things that you kind of think, yes, this makes it a Bric-a-Brac show, but what's the difference, or how do they change?
I feel like we were just talking about this, weren't we, Kitty?
Yeah, we were talking about this on the phone the other day, how to describe it on a flyer.
Yeah. All of our shows have been really different. We are sort of led by whatever Anne is inspired by at the moment, and she inspires all of us, and we're always on board. So the first one was the show Ash, based on the true story about her father's relationship to smoking. That was a lot of movement. It was manipulating suitcases. There was live music on stage as well. Then we made an immersive show making fun of the weight loss industry, which included games and lots of colors and characters and alternative endings. And then we made Mustard Doesn't Go With Girls, which was a kids' family show, musical. And then Glass Ceiling, which was a live film show about astronauts, female astronauts. And now this one's completely different as well. But I think the sort of through line is I think it's storytelling in surprising ways, in interesting ways. I think we like to play with lots of different elements and bring them together in a way that makes sense for the show, for that story. if that makes
It
sense.
does make sense. And it's interesting having seen the Mustard Show and now obviously wonderfully collaborating with you as our associate company on the Intrusion. We'll allied into that. But it does feel like I read a quote, which I think is from a review, very positive review of the Mustard Show, which talks about the satire. And I kind of see that satirical thing in what you're describing and what I'm seeing. And I think that's quite an interesting kind of, not saying that's solely what it is, it's a mix of things, but I can see why they would talk about that. And even as we record this, you're now working on the Intrusion, I see that there as well. And it's quite an interesting element, I suppose. Yeah, sorry, go on. Kitty.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think with Ash as well, we had like a run of all the adverts for cigarettes, like through the times, and like how they were kind of promoted as something that was good for you and healthy, and how they were sexy and how you should smoke. And I think we've always we're interested in what sparks discussion in us, if how we feel about the material morally, in different things. And I think it's always about finding the funny in something that can be really dark and serious. So I've never really thought about that, but yeah, all of our shows have been quite satirical, I would say.
And when you talk about the weight loss thing, and
Yeah.
I can imagine, I didn't see it, but I can imagine your take on that. It's quite interesting. Anyway, we are now collaborating and brilliantly excited by what you're. I'm not going to give too much away for the listeners. They'll have to come to many of the wonderful places you're taking it. Opening in Leeds is right, isn't it? Leeds Playhouse, got that right. I suppose I don't know, maybe this is a tricky question. I suppose, what does it feel like? This is your show that you're making, but we've invited you to come and do it with us. Have you collaborated with another company before? Is this the first time? You can be totally candid. I won't press stop on the podcast. But does it feel a strange experience that you're not totally on your own, but you're now with another company?
Yes, it's terrifying, but brilliant. Like, I think when we saw the call out, we've been massive fans of Told by an Idiot forever. I mean, I think I've said that a lot over the years, but when we saw the call out, I posted it on the group, and we all had loads of things going on in our lives at that point. Like, I've got a 2-year-old, Kitty was filming, Alex, I think, was in between America getting ready to get married. And I said, we've got to go for this. And then we became busy. And then Alex, I think the weekend before, said, if we're doing this, we need to do this. Off we go. And we did it the night before, stayed up till quite late with an absurd idea about cockroaches, which my husband detests. And we were like, no, we're doing it. It's going to be fun. I had no expectation of getting it, and then having to do the show. We just wanted to be seen by Told by an Idiot, and you do these brilliant artist surgeries, and we've kind of popped up in those over the years with different people. And then when we were sort of being shortlisted, we were like, oh wow, we really want this. We really want to do this, but we still don't know what the show is. So then when it came through, and we were like, oh God, we've got to make it now. That's scary. And people that you admire watching you make that is scary. But I think that's good for where we're at as a company, because you can get really comfortable and you go, this is how we make it. And we're all mates. And, you know, you mess around in a room and hope the work is good. We take our work very seriously, but in the room, we're not very serious. So I think
that's a good combination. I think I always think it's good to take the work seriously, but never yourself. I think it's that's a good way around to think about it. Sorry to jump in there, Anna, but well, thank you very much, Alex, for reminding your colleagues and friends that you needed to get on with this. I'm very glad that you did. We're obviously delighted because it brings a totally different energy and a different way of looking at stuff, which is always interesting for us as well. But with connections, you know, being in the room with you, it's really fascinating to see stuff that goes, oh yes, it's not like how we do it, but it kind of is in a way, or stuff where you go, oh, I hadn't really seen that before, or and it's also fascinating just on a personal level to see how another group communicates with each other. And you know, you obviously have a great friendship, and then you're making this stuff together, and I always think that's intriguing. Well, we obviously can't wait to see the Intrusion, and I know it's going to have. I always think when I think of your work, and certainly when I saw that show, about how how strongly connected to the audience it is and how theatrical it is, which obviously why we were drawn to it. But we're going to wrap up now, if that's all right. And I always wrap up the same way by asking 7 quick-fire questions. Because there's 3 of you, you may confer, but not for very long. It's got to be quite immediate, your response. The first question is, Wes Anderson or Michel Gondry?
Wes Anderson.
Wes Anderson. Yeah.
English mustard or French mustard?
Mustard doesn't go with girls. That's not an answer, sorry.
Good one.
Can't help it.
No, good answer. Florence Pugh or Saoirse Ronan?
Oh, I was going to say Saoirse.
Oh, I like a bit of division. That's good.
Alex,
So-
you're the deciding vote.
Oh, Florence, I'm sorry.
Oh, interesting. Croque Madame or Croque Monsieur?
Madame.
Croque Madame.
Can you just, sorry, you Parisians, can you just, I think I know the difference. What's the difference?
Madame has an egg on top.
Ah, yes, you're right. You're right. Thank you for clearing that up. This one, if you had to compete in the Winter Olympics, would you be either in the bobsleigh competition or the ski jump competition?
Is bobsleigh a team? Are there more people?
You can be a team. Bric, you have a team bobsleigh where you're on those things and you go hurtling down the mountain in a kind of
Hurtle
could
down the
be-
mountain, but all together sounds fun.
I'd like to see
I've
you.
never
be like a-
skied, so I can't speak for my strength in that.
Let's do a bobsledding team.
do a bobsleigh show.
Let's do it.
Like-
Next show.
Done.
Perfect.
Sorry, throw that in. Could be like a Bric's version of Cool Runnings. Whatever that
Yes.
Jamaica one was.
Great.
If you had an Edinburgh slot to choose between, you only have 2 slots to choose. Would you choose 10 a.m. or 10 p.m.?
I think the 10 a.m. theatre slot is often really good.
Oh,
I always listen to Kitty about
I think-
this.
do you?
She's
Well, just because I worked
Yeah.
at a venue,
Oh.
but
Okay.
volunteered at a
Interesting.
venue. I think the 10 a.m. theatre slot, you can catch some really good stuff.
It's interesting. Sorry, I'll before my last question, I'll pause for a second, digress. There was a brilliant company who I adored called The Right Size. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but it was Hamish McCall and Sean Foley, and then their work was directed by Joss, and they were brilliant, astonishing double act. And they took one of their best shows called Stop Calling Me Vernon, brilliant title, to the Pleasance. And we'd been the year before, and Hamish said, they've offered us a 12 o'clock slot. And I said, oh, midday is fine. He said, no, it's midnight. What do you think? And I said, well, your show is mad enough and wild enough and funny enough to maybe cope and work. I don't want to don't hold me to that. But anyway, they went for the 12 midnight slot in Presence, and I saw it to be supportive. There wasn't many people there. And I remember on one night, there was about 30 of us, and we had laughed like drains. And I'd seen it about 4 times, but this audience absolutely wet with laughter. And I remember at the end, there was a brilliant moment where Hamish and John were on stage, and then the applause stopped, and Hamish said, thank you very much for coming. If you've enjoyed this evening's performance, keep it to yourselves. and it was such a brilliant way. And then they virtually sold out. So anyway,
Wow.
there's a good story of Edinburgh. And my last question, I know Christmas has come and gone, but I'm going to ask you, Muppets Christmas Carol or Muppets Treasure Island?
Christmas Carol. That's me.
Yes.
What are you saying,
Have you
Anna?
seen Treasure Island?
I've not
Yes.
seen Treasure Island, so maybe I need to.
Well,
that.
Kitty, I think you're right. I would agree with you. It's Christmas Card is a masterpiece, but I think Treasure Island is very good. It's a very good adaptation of the Robert Louis Stevenson.
Get it on the list.
Anyway, something for the weekend. Gang, it's been so lovely catching up and having a more in-depth insight into your meetings and trainings and how you work. And obviously, we're going to carry on working together. So thank you very much, and I'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Dear listeners, if you've enjoyed this idiot podcast, please spread the word